Hello, everybody. So as said, my name is Uku, and I'll be talking about the importance of the small stuff. But before we actually get to the topic at hand, I'm going to need your help for a second. Now, some of you have been sitting around for a while, so first and foremost, everybody, please get up for a second. Just join me in standing just for a second, right? Everybody put your laptop away for a second, stand up for a second, stretch yourself a little bit. Now, join me in doing one thing. Put your hands in front of you. Right? And let's do 3 squats. 1, 2, and 3. Please be seated. Now, I'm not going to tell you why that actually was important. You'll figure it out during the actual speech itself. But I'm going to start off by one simple observation that I've made. Now, as leaders, a lot of us have seen those leadership articles, right? What are the 5 things that every great manager does? Or are you a good manager or are you a great manager? Find out how. And then when you actually do a deep dive into those articles, it's usually something along the lines of, you know, get up at 5 a.m., have a journal, or eat more kale, right? And as professionals, we kind of know that your kale consumption levels don't directly correlate to your bottom line. Unless, of course, you are a kale company, in which case disregard my comment. But for me, it has always been the insistent need to hit the small targets, to have the small successes that have created the person that I kind of am today and the success that I've had so far. I've had the opportunity in my life to have a lot of varied experiences, right? I've sold almonds in a cart on the streets of Old Town. I've been a waiter. I've been a military commander. I've been a valedictorian. I'm still a yoga teacher, by the way. I've been a high school English teacher, and now I'm the CEO of a multinational company, and I'm also a father of 2 wonderful children. And throughout all of that, it has been the smallest things that have always driven me. And the first instance of my conscious recollection of when a small thing really, really mattered was during the tail end of my tenure as a military commander. I was an artillery platoon commander in the Estonian Defense Forces, and it was one of the last exercises we ever did during that tenure where one small thing happened. When you're in the military, you're given a piece of kit, what's called a French. It's a jacket. It is a wonderful piece of kit because it's sort of like a handbag that you wear because it just has all of these pockets, zippers. You can just put everything on you. Think of everything that you have in your like backpack or knapsack or something like that. Put your laptop here, your phone here, everything else on you as well. Everything is on you all the time. It just comes with one simple rule. No button undone, no zipper unzipped. And I was religious about following that rule with myself and with my men. And it was during one of the last exercises where I noticed that one of the buttons on one of the flaps of the French was undone. Now, at the heat of the moment, I decided to ignore it and plow through. And a few hours later, we needed to start doing tactical position changes, in which you do them in the dark, right? But I needed to check the map where we were. So I took my hand, reached into my pocket, tried to grab my headlamp, and it wasn't there. Right? So then I decided maybe I'll ask the boys for their headlamps. But I kind of also didn't want to, because since I had been so religious about following that rule with myself and with the men, your ego kind of gets in the way and you kind of don't want to ask because you put yourself in an awkward position. So I didn't, because I had memorized the map, right? So I decided that we'd just go for it, because I remembered the route by heart. Now, we ended up doing a 30-minute detour, which isn't like too bad. A 30-minute detour probably isn't the worst thing in the world, unless you do a 30-minute detour in enemy territory. Unless you do a 30-minute detour in heavily guarded enemy territory. That decision during wartime would have led to the death of me and my 45 men. Now, I'm not saying that me not buttoning up my French led to the death of 45 men. I'm saying it contributes. One of the things that I learned as a volunteer firefighter is the fact that the small preparations are the things that lead to ultimate success. One of the first things you do when you go on call is you take a dry pair of socks, you put them in your rubber boots, and you put your rubber boots next to the fire engine every single time. And the reason you do that is when you walk around with your regular socks, they gather a little bit of moisture, right, from walking around. And then when you actually get a call and you need to jump in the truck at speed, you need to pull those wellies on, right, those rubber boots on. And those rubber boots are designed to protect you from water, to protect you from fire, to protect you from punctures, but they sure as hell aren't designed to be comfortable and go on fast. So if you have a little bit of moisture in your socks, you'll be faffing around for like 20, 30 seconds trying to get them on. Everybody in the truck is already going, come on, man, we have to go. Maybe you'll spend like 20, 30 extra seconds. Now, 20, 30 extra seconds really isn't that much, unless you're a firefighter. Because the difference between 20 and 30 seconds is the difference between getting to a scene and starting to extinguish a fire, or getting to a scene and starting to contain a fire. Now, I'm not saying not putting dry socks in your rubber boots when you go on call will lead to a house burning down. I'm saying it contributes. And I bet there's a fair few parents in this audience as well, right? And it's the small examples we make as parents that sometimes have the biggest lasting effect. It's the sandwich that I decide to eat on the couch instead of at the table and show an example to my kids that leads to me for 3 months trying to make them eat at the table when they every time say, but Dad, you ate at the couch as well. Tiniest example is what leads there. And as leaders, it's those examples that people pick up on as well. If you're late, maybe a few minutes, then your team feels a lot more comfortable being late a few minutes. If you make typos, then the quality of your work is put under question. So the consistency in the smallest execution of details is always the most important for me. Because for me, success is the execution of small steps consistently. And as mentioned, in the past 7 years, the consistent execution of the small things has led me from being a junior salesman. When I joined Messente, the actual sales position didn't exist. It was created. It was lower than a regular salesperson, like that low, right? And through that time, in 7 years, through doing the small things well, I went from a junior salesman to the CEO and shareholder of that same company. I'm not very talented, I'm not very skilled, but I'm very consistent, right? That consistency is something that I've built into kind of a moniker of my life. See, one of the things that I build and one of the things that I'm most proud of is a streak, a yoga streak. I do yoga every single day for the last 930 days in a row without skipping a day. This means that I've done yoga in airports. I've done them in buses, I've done it on trains, I've done it backstage, I've done it front stage. Wherever I need to do it, I'll do it. And it doesn't matter how much I do. Whether it's 5 minutes or an hour, it matters that I do. Because that results in me consistently hitting every target I need to hit, because I know that I have the consistency to hit that target every single time. That streak becomes a tool for myself. There is, however, one problem, and that problem is the question of the entry barrier. A lot of people have tried to exercise daily. A lot of people have tried to read every day. And usually when they set themselves a goal, it's like read half an hour every day, train half an hour every day, etc., etc., etc. But then, you know, sometimes you're sick, or sometimes you forget, or sometimes something else happens, and you drop the streak. Maybe you drop it after 30 days, maybe you drop it after 10 days, maybe you drop it after 200 days. The problem is that sometimes we set goals and standards for ourselves that are too big. The smallest instance of success becomes too big because half an hour of time to find every day to read a book can be difficult to find. But finding the time to read 2 pages while you're brushing your teeth at the sink is much easier to find. Putting a book next to your toilet, so every time you're on the can, you will read 2 pages, is much easier to do than to specifically find half an hour every time you've done all of the dishes and everything else during your day. It's about what's the smallest instance of success. You want to train every day? Do 3 squats. Start there. Right? It's something. And it's more important to do something consistently than to do perfectly all the time. Because it's that consistently that actually builds into long-term success. It's the same thing with leaders as well. If you practice your sales pitch day in and day out, if you network day in and day out, if you engage day in and day out in LinkedIn, for example, that's where the success is. You don't have to have perfect content. You have to have consistency in content. You have to be there, because if you are there, the success will follow. No matter how good you are at the start. You'll get better throughout time as well, especially if you do a little bit. I mean, 3 weeks ago, I did the splits for the first time in my life. Felt good. It wasn't a goal, it was a side product of the consistency. Right? So, what are my 4 great things every leader could do to guarantee success? First and foremost, what's the smallest action? What is the tiniest thing, the tiniest instance of success you could possibly generate for yourself? Make it as small as humanly possible. Make it 3 squats. Make it 1 page of reading. Make it a paragraph of reading. Make it a sentence of reading if that's the smallest you can do. What's the smallest instance of success you could create? What's the entry barrier? Is it time? Is it money? Is it other people? Sometimes we need to be more social, so we need something close to us, right? If you're picking a gym, for example, don't pick the fancy gym that's far away. Pick the shit gym next to the office, because you're more likely to go there rather than to go to the fancy one. And it's about going there, not where you go. And then repeat. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Repeat over and over and over again until an activity becomes a habit, becomes a necessity, becomes a weapon. A weapon that you can use day in and day out to prove to yourself that any routine, any process, any business practice that you're looking to establish is just something that you can do because you already have done. The reason why I know that I will have success is because I prove to myself every single day that I can do it again and again and again and again. So that I know that the next time I try to do something, I can do it again and again and again and again. You prove yourself in consistency. And last but not least, encourage others. Bring others along. Sometimes you need somebody to lean on. Sometimes you need help from others. Sometimes the entry barrier is just the fact that you need someone beside you. So bring others along. Help them. Help them write their emails. Write it better yourself. Help them do a few squats. Maybe it helps somebody. And make sure that you're consistently trying to push forward, even if it's just the smallest increment. I trained when I had COVID. I wouldn't call it training. It was 5 minutes of me pretty much doing this in pain, but it was something, and something is better than nothing, right? Because for me, the development of a successful company or a successful professional happens 1 day at a time, 1 email at a time, 1 squat at a time, 1 bite of kale at a time. And as such, I'd actually like to congratulate you, because for all of those who actually joined me in doing squats today, congratulations, you've trained today. It's day 1 of 365. See you in another 364 days. Sweat the small stuff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, again, everybody, ask your questions, please, on the insights.votomo.eu, so I can actually read them out. My first one to you would be, so it's about consistency.
Yeah.
And the small steps. Do you have any other tips of how to stay consistent? Because it can be difficult. Like, if you have a setback, for example, how do you deal with a setback?
So the way to deal with a setback is literally just do it again and just start. You know, the best way to do it is even if you skip a day, just start again. again and again and again, even if you have that setback. And the best thing you can do to sort of guarantee success is not make it probable that you will succeed, but make it impossible to not succeed. So, for example, I train in cycling, right? I like cycling on top of yoga as well. So I knew that I wasn't going to cycle during the winter because cold and snow and everything else, and you need special kit, etc. So what I did was I bought a training bike. I put it next to the kid's bedroom. I put my shirt there, my shorts there, my shoes there, and a water bottle there. So that every time I put the kids to bed, I'll go cycle for like 10 minutes to half an hour. So it's impossible to ignore it because it's right there. And that's the kind of point of it. If you want to read, put it in a place where you can't ignore it, where it's just right there. And the harder you make it on yourself to not do it, the more likely you are to do it.
Change your environment to suit your needs.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Now, thank you. People are sending in questions. How many areas of improvement do you focus on when doing these tiny triumphs? How not to take too many?
So, I would start with one thing at a time, pick something. One of the most common things that happens is when people start off, in January with their New Year's resolutions, they'll make 20 New Year's resolutions. I'm going to be a better person. I'm going to be a happier parent. I'm going to read. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to train. I'm going to, and et cetera, et cetera. Pick one. Just pick one and get good at that and then go forward. And make goals consistently on the way. So, first goal would be try to do 5 days, try to do 7 days, and then make it 14, then make it 30, then make it 90, then make it 180, 360, etc., etc. My goal right now is 1,000 days. As soon as I get to 1,000, I'll switch it to 1,500, and then I'll switch it to 5 years and 10 years, and etc. But constantly keep it so it's obtainable, but not too distant. If you commit at the start of the year in January to trying to do a year, you're probably going to fail. If you commit to doing 5 days and then 14 and then 30, you have a much higher chance of succeeding.
Okay. And then has becoming C-level always been your aspiration?
Probably,
okay.
To be honest. I guess it has been, or one of the things that I learned during my military practices as well is one of the things that I enjoy is leading, and hence it was a natural progression into that position.
Okay. What do you suggest to people who have mental health issues? Is it the same approach or something else?
It really depends on what mental health issues you specifically have, because there's a pretty broad spectrum of things that there is. Usually, if you have mental health issues, seek professional help. I, for example, have gone through burnout. Because, if you hit that pace and you never rest, interestingly enough, resting is also important.
That was going to be one of my questions. And if this kind of mentality, how do you avoid burnout?
Exactly. That's why sort of resting needs to also be something that you consistently do. You need to plan resting into that planning of doing other things as well. But one of the things, for example, my psychologist told me was to use that same mentality on resting. If you are that good at being that consistent, great. Consistently get at least 7.5 hours of sleep every single day. And I've kept to that, and it has immediately had an immense sort of impact on my life. So turn that strength that you have into helping that side of yourself as well.
So yeah, if you're going goal-oriented, then it's just not about things you need to achieve professionally, but also about your own health and so on. So everything, goalify that kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Then tell us about Messente. What is it? How did you build it?
Messente. So Messente is a global business messaging company. It's a company that pretty much everybody in this room has at least had one contact with, or probably several per month. If you've ever, signed up to Volt and gotten an SMS with an OTP code, if you've ever gotten a package from Omniva, if you've ever gotten a reminder from your dentist, if you've ever gotten a promotional message from Weekend Shoe Shop, then those are us.
Okay.
And we do that in 197 markets across multiple channels. What we help is businesses have better communication, text-based communication with their clients.
Then actually a very interesting question about if the steps are too small for when you're doing all these goals and so on, then I'll sort of paraphrase what's being said here, but some people can see that it's not the real thing as this person sees, and maybe not even worth it, or sort of go big or go home mentality, and how to overcome that mentality.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the things that, interestingly enough, we've seen with Messente as well, to draw a parallel, because Messente has grown over 10 years, and we're actually just as old as Twilio is, but they've grown into a multi-billion-dollar company, and we're only a multi-million-dollar company. But the difference is that we've grown steadily and consistently, and because of that, we don't have to fire 26% of our workforce, firing a few shots off. But that's the point, you know. It's not about going big or going home, it's about consistently building, because if you consistently build over time, you will fail, but you will fail small, and you will achieve small, but the chain reaction will build you to something big. If you only go big or go home, you will end up going home more often than going big.
Yeah, I see the sort of mentality shift of, you know, if you say like I'll do 100 days and then you go up to 900 and so on, it all sort of adds up to something bigger.
Exactly.
And how do you balance all aspects of your life, family, yoga, work, etc.? Do you have some tricks that work for you?
Consistency. No, the main thing that I do is I try to focus on getting the things done that are important first, and then making it a small amount of stuff, right? So every morning I get up, I focus on getting at least, you know, between 10 and 30 minutes of yoga done, and then spending at least a little bit of time with my kids, then taking them off to, you know, kindergarten or working with them, then actually doing the work, then coming home, and then having a small amount of training, etc. A big part of me being able to do all of these things is us balancing our work and home life with my wife, because she kind of works the same way a little bit as well, in that same sort of consistency. So we've, you know, dedicated days. Tuesday is my day, Monday is your day. So we've been very cautious about building all of these things into sort of like time blocks, but then keeping every time block with a very generous buffer. Yeah. Because the most common thing that you see is, I'm not an advocate for super organizing. Yeah. Because if you super organize and then one thing falls off, then everything else falls off. Effect, yeah. Exactly. So try to have dedicated time for things, but make sure that you also keep a lot of flexibility in there as well. So for me, it's about balance.
Okay. And the last question I have here, and this is something you don't have to do, is do a split, please. So no pressure, but you don't have to. So
I am totally going to split the pants if I do that. Wait,
I'll you should do it.
No, wait. I'll do something cooler. Wait.
Okay. Ooh. Okay. For a moment, I thought you were going to split your spine. That would be worse, but
almost. Never do that in cold.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.